Welcome to Good Morning Hospitality, your one-stop shop for the latest news, noteworthy trends, and thought-provoking discussions across the industry. From hotels and short-term rentals to all things travel and hospitality, you'll find each episode equips you with the information that you need to start your week. Join us on Good Morning Hospitality every Monday, wherever you get your podcasts.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you, my
How are
friend?
you, Peter?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm very well. We had a particularly sort of late, disturbed night of childcare. So I was supposed to go for a jog this morning with industry shout-out opportunity with my buddy Nils, who is the CEO of Minute. And he's also a dad to a young kid. And I just gave him the 7 a.m. text going, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. So
Oh no.
yeah, one of those type nights, but it's all fun. It's all fun and games, really. So yeah, but yeah, big shout out to him. Missed the chance for a little chin wag with him, and hey, we've got some good weather here, right? It's nice. It's kind of like it's only sort of a couple of months a year where you can actually get up and run in a t-shirt in London. So it's a shame to have missed it.
Maybe this weekend then you'll have more time.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, who knows? Who knows? I think the weekends are actually, then I don't have the excuse. I can't hide in my office and pretend I'm working. So
Yeah.
arguably harder. How about you? How you doing? You okay?
Yeah, pretty good. Well, I actually got up to do some yoga this morning, so I'm feeling good. I've been trying to work out a lot more, so I've done a lot of different gym classes this week and stuff, trying to get into that routine. And last week I went wake surfing and I saw a really great progress there. I can do it now. Like I'm able to stay on the board for a while and surf the wave without getting pulled by the rope. So that's like huge progress for me because usually when you're learning to wake surf, you're kind of holding onto the rope quite a lot because it allows you to stay on the wave. But once you get that feel for the wave, you can let go of the rope and you're actually able to surf the wave for a while. So I managed to do that and I'm really happy.
That's very cool. And how do you pick up the rope to get the momentum back? Does it? I don't quite get that.
Well, you don't. That's the point. The whole point is to try and just let go of the rope entirely and just surf the wave the whole time. And then at the end, there's a point where you fall in the water. But the idea is really to just surf the wave.
That's so cool. That's so great. So does that make you? Is it like karate? Do you get like a different color wetsuit now that you get to wear, like a yellow belt or something?
No, not at all. Not at all. But yeah, still wearing a wetsuit because it's still quite cold here. The water.
Well, I'm very jealous of your weight, but I'm also very jealous of you getting up to do yoga. Was that a virtual class or was that in a studio with other people?
No, it was a virtual class.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mainly do them at home, and I save my money for the in-person sort of more strengthening classes during the week.
Yeah. I'm not. I used to do it at home with Jasmine, and then she sort of banned me from doing it because my posture's so awful that she was convinced myself. So she's like, we have to go to a class. And she makes me go and stand at the front so that the yoga, or near the front. And I'm a tall guy, right? So I'm a bit of a kind of like I'm sticking out like a sore thumb, and I'm made to go and stand near the teacher so that the teacher can correct my posture.
Yeah, I guess when you're starting out, have you done it for a while?
I'm completely crap at yoga, but I mean I guess we've been doing it since lockdown, but I am pretty crap.
Wow, okay.
I run a lot and I'm not very flexible, so I think that's why it kind of and. I've got particularly long legs, and then I can't touch my toes and things like that. So I'm a yoga teacher's dream, right? Because sometimes you probably do a class and you're like, oh, I can't help anyone, whereas they can really give me loads of attention. I'm that kid in the class,
Love it.
What you got going on then? What's upcoming for you?
Nothing. What's upcoming? I think nothing specific coming to mind right now, but one of the big news pieces that we have is that there was a big EU election on Sunday, which had a pretty drastic turnout, and it's actually going to affect some of the short-term rental regulation laws that were coming into place in France. So what happened is that following the elections, the French government has been dissolved, and that just means that some of the regulations they were working on are just taking a pause, and the specific SCR regulation that was going to come into place is essentially just not going to happen because what's going to happen is the new government will have to either resubmit the bills on this regulation and start the process from scratch or simply abandon it completely. So either way, they've lost a lot of time in the creation of the regulation, and it's just kind of restart or not. So we'll see.
Very interesting.
So pretty drastic changes. We'll see.
Yeah.
I have no idea what's going to come out of it.
What was your view of the? I think we did talk about it, didn't we? But did you think it was quite poorly constructed, the bill, or were you generally, broadly speaking, not in favor of it necessarily, but just thought it was fair?
It's hard to say because one of the main things is that they were trying to give the power to the local authorities in terms of the regulations and putting in place more drastic measures or not. So it was difficult for us. We weren't really sure what was going to come out of it because we would have been affected by, different authorities in the French Alps. And depending on sort of their stance on the short-term rental industry, we would have probably seen some areas that were heavily regulated and others that were maybe less regulated. So you can't really say what would have come out of it, but it was an opportunity for us to, either way, we are trying to have more discussions with the local communities and be closer to them and ensure that we're sort of working in line with their goals and not against them. But yeah, I can't say.
Yeah, very interesting. Okay, well, watch this space. But in very interesting times in Europe and especially France, right? You're going to, people are going to be sick of elections, aren't they? 2 weeks, everyone gets to vote again.
Yeah, at the end of the month. Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Okay, so my STR highlight this week, I read it in the news this morning. I was delighted. Big shout out to the two partners involved in this. The ASSC partnering with Sestonica, promoting responsible tourism in Scotland, which is very, very cool. Big shout out to ASSC, which is Fiona Campbell Scottish Association of Scottish Self-Caterers. A very progressive, very forward-thinking association. Always work hard to, try and affect change around policy and all that sort of stuff. Taking the lead here with Sestonica, a great company to partner with, thinking about promoting best practice amongst the industry around making sure that vacation rentals are buying the right sort of products and thinking about sustainability, and also, I guess, focusing on not ensuring that areas are not being over visited. So we talked about over tourism a lot on the podcast, and I know, Raphi, it kind of made me think about what OVO Network is doing, right? Which you'll have to remind me what the tagline is. We can't move the mountain.
We can't move the mountain, but we can shape their future. We can help shape their future.
Yeah. I'm sure you love this, right? This chimes with what you're trying to do at OVO, right? Being conscious and all good stuff, right?
Yeah, absolutely. What's good is making me think of this next article on Google Trends. It's that it seems like the trends are going in our favor in regards to over tourism. So what I was reading is that we have a lot of travelers who are interested in sort of more value for money as opposed to just luxury stays or cheap stays. And there's this rise of what they call destination dupes. So people are now looking to find another destination which is similar to one that's already quite popular and visited, because this destination ends up being a little bit cheaper since over tourism, some of the effects are just higher cost of living and higher costs for travelers as well. So yeah, I think people are starting to move a little bit away from or I'm hoping a little bit away from those touristy spots that are heavily visited and trying to find maybe more lesser well-known destinations that are maybe different, more unique, but especially less visited and yeah, discovering
beating the crowds, right? It's beating the crowds, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
That idea. I like I've never heard that expression before. So destination dupe.
Yeah, it's coming from the retail industry. So I think it's got something to do with brand. So as opposed to buying, the Chanel bag, you can find a bag looking exactly the same, but it's not actually, the one that's going to cost you 3,000 euros.
No, I like that. I think that's really cool. And it does go on, I think, to what we're talking about here. So we've looked at Google's Think with Google. These are the top summer travel trends for 2024. And we've tried to, I guess, see how they relate back into short-term rental. First one, affordable luxury. So this idea that travelers are seeking budget-friendly accommodation experiences, but then opting to upgrade when they're in that process. It made me think of your market as well, Raphi, right? When you're upselling things to do with skiing and things like that. This idea of affordable luxury, clearly the economy is not firing on all cylinders at the moment. We've talked about that quite a lot, but we think it's coming back. I always say, and again, I don't even want to say this because people are going to throw it back in my face and quote me on this, but travel is recession proof because people will always want to find a way to go on holiday. And
Mhm.
I'm not surprised at all to see affordable luxury being one of the trends because, again, people still want to have that great experience, but maybe they're watching the pennies a little bit. Is that something that you've noticed at Ovo?
Um, I think that we actually just happen to have a product that works really well when it comes to affordable luxury because we are in that sort of high end space, which isn't the luxury space and it's not the cheap space. It's like we have the good quality, but we also have a fair price point. So I would say it's quite good for us. When you talk about affordable luxury, that's basically how we would describe our product as well. But yeah, I definitely understand what you're saying in terms of like the recession and people just wanting to get the most that they can out of the money that they have at their availability for a holiday.
Yeah, it's not wanting to have less experiences, right? It's just it's just
Mm.
changing the experiences you have to try and get them within your budget. This idea as well, I think this is linked as well. One of the trends is spontaneous booking. So again, a significant rise, and we've seen this in the industry. This feels like a post-COVID trend onwards for me. People booking last minute, right? Because I guess people are slightly scarred by having their bookings cancelled that they'd made a year in advance during the COVID period. So this significant rise in last minute travel bookings with 48% of European trips in August 2023 booked the week before departure.
Wow.
So that was last summer. We're seeing that continue obviously into this year. Frustrating if you're an accommodation provider, right? You're a host because you're trying to get your occupancy booked in advance. But I think you do have to hold steady, right, with your revenue management. Can you relate to that? Have you seen that your revenue manager guys have to kind of hold their nerve a bit and expect it to come to some
Yeah.
point?
Yeah. I mean, again, I don't think that we're attracting last minute bookers simply because of the fact that we have larger properties. So it's a bit more complicated. More last minute than previously, but not 1 week before, or at least not the uptick that we're probably seeing in other spaces. But it makes me think of the Olympic Games, actually. It's, how we're saying that the demand just isn't there for the price point that these people are trying to rent their properties out for. I really do wonder, maybe at one point we'll see that the demand actually was there. It just came in way later.
Yeah, I think it's worth holding your nerve in Paris right now because ultimately as well, like, any week you book is good. Therefore, why would you drop the price? If you're not going to get the whole Olympics booked, maybe just part of it. You want to make as much return on investment as possible. No, I agree. I think it will come in. That's another one of the trends here. Major sporting events. The Euros kicks off tonight. Very exciting. Olympics next. Clearly, that I think around getting everybody out and about and traveling and a reason to do it. Hopefully is going to start to report that summer bouts we all expect to happen. And then this one, which I think is just a really, really interesting trend, is the extended peak season. And by that, we mean people traveling earlier in the summer to get a better deal and people traveling later on into the summer, mid-September, as long as you think you can get away with it with the weather. It's not been a great summer this year for anyone. So it might be the wrong strategy this summer. But in previous years, if you'd booked a holiday in mid-September in the Mediterranean, you'd be absolutely fine, right? Probably all the way up to October, you'd be fine and get really good weather. And I can completely relate to this one because we do it as a family. Our kids aren't in school, so why would we bother traveling in August when you can travel in September and you can get, probably a 20% drop in the rate, and less crowds on the beaches in the towns that you're visiting, the beautiful towns of France that you're trying to visit. So I think this is really good news for accommodation providers, right? Like it means that it's not just the 6 weeks of the school holiday where you end up getting busy, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my favorite months are definitely September and October. NC is like overcrowded in summer. It's super touristy. So if you have that flexibility, you can come in September, October, it's better. And actually the weather seems to hold up really, really well, especially more so than May and June. Especially this year is like a lot of rain right now. But for us, yeah, I'm hoping it's going to help us increase our occupancy levels in autumn. So like more what you would consider to be off season. We're really trying to push that a little bit as well. So let's see.
Well, obviously for you, September, October is better because the water's warmer, right? Had all summer to warm up, so you can wakeboard to your heart's content.
Yeah. Well, I don't mind. I don't mind swimming when the water's cold.
And then this comes back to what we started by talking about, is this sustainability trend, right? Which is eco-conscious travelers, growing demand for rail services to get you to your holiday. I love this one. So we opted for a little town near Marseille this year, and we're going to get the train from London, because the idea of any other way of doing it with there's no good way of doing it with two kids, but this feels like the nicer one, and clearly there's that eco element too. So again, I feel like we're hitting some of those trends as a family. What I'd say is, I wonder as an industry if we're doing enough in our marketing and when we talk about the experiences around highlighting for travelers how they can arrive sustainably and what their options are, and building content around that, because clearly that's going to be a way to get people to be booking on your website, is to have content that matches this. And the other point is, are the train companies doing enough to kind of put enough trains on and get the price competitive enough? And are we doing enough to stimulate that? Because the cheap flights are addictive because they're so cheap and they're so frequent. So there's a lot to unpack with that. I know we won't have time to do it now, but Raphi, on that marketing point, do you think as an industry we're doing enough to talk about sustainability and drive traffic to our websites like that?
So we are trying to write some blog posts around like how do you travel more sustainably to the Alps, that sort of thing. Is our marketing going to make the biggest difference? I'm not sure. The fact that Google is actually implementing train route suggestions now into their travel search thing, I think that's really good. I think that's going to really help shift the mindset a little bit. But one of the biggest problems, I would say, especially in France, is that the train end up being half the time just way more expensive than taking a flight. And if we're talking about affordable travel, well, I'm not sure how much people are going to opt for a train over a flight if they see that actually, well, the train takes way longer and it's way more expensive. So those are things that I feel like will need to change.
It's affordable luxury again, isn't it? Right? Like, you're right. If squeeze cost of living, people have less pounds and euros in their pockets. You're not going to. If the option of the train is slower and significantly more expensive, which it often is, it's embarrassingly more expensive, then yeah, it's hard to see how people will switch across. A couple more, which we've talked about. So AI assistants, we've talked about that a few times. It all seems to come up. It's the trend that's happening, and more. I think by next summer firmly next summer, 2025, everyone will be using these AI assistants in some way, shape, or form. It seems to be moving at breakneck speed. Won't go into it too much. And then, you couldn't have any 30-minute podcast without talking about Taylor Swift. It seems it's inevitable. It's inevitable. AI and Taylor Swift, two things that no one can go more than 2 days in the world without talking about them. But yeah, so this idea of multi-country trips, so people traveling to big events, tacking on holidays around these big events. I don't know about you, Raphi, but I'm starting to get Taylor Swift FOMO. Like, I had no interest in it, and now everyone's made me think I should be going.
I know. I feel like I know more and more people who are just obsessed with Taylor Swift. And I'm like, what is the craze about? Like, what's going on? What am I missing out on?
Yeah. Well, clearly it's a summer travel trend. And I guess you see the same thing with festivals, don't you? And all of that sort of good stuff. We've already talked about the sporting element of it. Bloody hell. Okay, right. Raphi and I are going to try and find Taylor Swift tickets. Right, we're going to meet online and do it. And this idea that people want to have experiences, we're back at where Airbnb is with the icon experiences. This does seem to be a trend that's here to stay. I guess, Raphi, in your market, again, it's quite straightforward, isn't it? The experience is the mountains. So it's quite easy to point your marketing in that direction. But if you're an urban operator, bit of a minefield, isn't it, to know which guests to try and get and which levers to pull.
Yeah, it's maybe also about trying to create a bit of a niche around your product. Like, what is it that you're specialized in? What makes you different? Like, your properties, what are different about them? Maybe, redoing the deco and making sure it's a bit more quirky, things like that. I don't know. Urban marketing is definitely good.
Yeah, I think that's actually good advice. And then I was sent a report yesterday, actually, which was telling me that Gen Z, the youngsters. Raphi, are you Gen Z or are you millennial?
No, I'm a millennial.
Yeah. Okay. Nice. You can be as bitter and old as the rest of us. Great. Okay. You're also millennial. Good. So Gen Z, search trends for them, talking about having a niche and all that. Over 50% of the travelers, what they're looking for is the great outdoors. which I thought was very cool. Like that chance to
Mm.
like unplug, disconnect, be with nature. Um, and when I speak to operators in mountain towns in the US or like by the sea, like rural, coastal, they are reporting like bumper summers. And that. So it's clearly the great outdoors is having a moment. Let's hope it has more than a moment and that people don't go there in their droves and ruin it. But there you go. We're all looking for those type of experiences, which I also think is very cool.
Yeah, trying to stay away from the digital lives that we're all heading towards, I guess. About
So there's
balancing.
an irony, isn't there? Isn't there an irony of using your AI trip planner to get you to the great
Yeah.
outdoors, and then you unplug?
Yeah, totally. But hey, whatever
Um,
works.
yeah, whatever gets you there, whatever gets you there. Cool. Well, look, that's really fun. We're going to keep drawing on that on these trends, and because I think it's really interesting and see how they're applicable to short term rental. I definitely see how they relate. So it's really interesting hearing Google's view on it. Let's go to our first article proper, which is from Skiff. Short-term rentals haven't fully caught on for business travel, but they're getting there. Raphi,
Yeah.
tell us about.
So there's a number of travel management companies and corporations that are starting to allow vacation rentals as accommodation. And it's definitely an opportunity for our sector. I think that there are probably some shifts that are happening within the way that business travelers travel. With regards to quite a few, there are probably a few reasons around that, and I'll get into that. But definitely an opportunity for us. So basically, there's a desire for more flexibility. This is all since the pandemic. Office and corporate travel culture has been impacted, and now travelers really want to be able to extend their business trips and have the option to work from anywhere. So all of that can be combined. And then there's also the convenience, comfort, and cost aspect to our sector, which is maybe some of the appeal. So in a short-term rental, business travelers can stock a fridge as opposed to have to always eat every single meal outside. The comfort, so feeling like they're in a home away from home as opposed to a standardized hotel. And cost, so there's that assumption that short-term rentals are cheaper than hotels. So there was actually an article that we were studying about this, and it turns out that might not be the case. It just depends on so many factors, but it is still the perception, I would say. Question, Leo, do you take business trips very often?
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah, a lot. I say unfortunately, I love going away for work, but I'm away too often for the family's liking. So in a bad year, I'm away every 3 weeks, I'd say, a couple of days.
Okay. And what do you book? Do you book a short-term rental or a hotel?
So it's a really good question. We're quite a young business, so we don't have we're 7 years old, 7 years old as a business, and we don't have layers and layers of complexity in our booking of accommodation. Now my executive assistant would make the booking, but that doesn't. I would then sign that off. It doesn't need to go through. We don't have a team of people that use a particular software. We're very so we do go and book on online travel agents for vacation rentals. And so I think that's part of the issue here is I think established corporate businesses have way more process. So you have to get in that process. You're using an archaic system. We're not, but still, well, I'd say it's about 50-50 hotels and vacation rentals, I would say.
Yeah, so I feel like there's probably a shift happening. So I would say like the more traditional way that a business traveler would travel, and I'm speaking from experience watching my dad, who's literally the definition of a business traveler. Um, it's always gonna, I mean, for him in any case, it's always gonna be a big hotel brand that he knows that he can rely on. He knows what to expect, and probably also linked to the fact that they have loyalty points as well. So for me, these are things that we, as an industry, we just don't have that on offer as much. The reliability thing is such a big issue. I would say is like business travelers just don't really have time to deal with potential issues in the short-term rental property. What if they arrive and suddenly they have to wait around an hour for the key, or there's an issue checking in or something like that? These are things that I think corporate travelers, especially traditionally, just don't have time to deal with. There's also the standardization. So there is that thing of, I think these business travelers just want to be able to know what they're going to end up experiencing. It's just they don't need anything unique. I think that we can pride ourselves in it as an industry in being a bit unique in the experience. We can offer something very different, and every experience in a short-term rental will be different, as opposed to hotels where you have that standardization, which is something that other people value, and I would say especially business travelers value much more.
I think
But I would say that
I think
there's yeah.
sorry to interrupt you on that point, but I just want to lock in on that point because I think, when you ask me what's the split, 50% of the time where it's a hotel, it's because I need it to be like quick, standard, repeatable. I need to know what I'm going to walk into, and I'm probably on my own. So I go and sit in the hotel
Yeah.
bar, eat something and watch some sport on the TV and then go to bed. And I haven't got the time to like, oh, I'm in Columbus, Ohio this week. I'm going to the food market. I'm going to go and watch the local college football team. I haven't got time for any of that. I'm just like in, out. And actually what I want to do is get into the hotel and call my family on WhatsApp straight away. I want to do a video call and settle in. And then the other 50% of the time is where we're maybe there as a larger team and it's more of an experience. Or you might travel with your family and then you want Wi-Fi and you want a place to work and you want to go longer. But I think there's a time and a place for both. And I think where you're leaning with this, I'm going to ask you now, maybe you're not, but it's as an industry, do we want to be taking 2 or 3 night corporate stays? Is that really where we want to be? Because that is maybe where a hotel is best. What we want to be doing is positioning our properties so that people can stay for longer. So group trips, wider team get-togethers, or I'm away with my family and I'm gonna have a conference for 4 days. I'm gonna make it into a 2-week holiday. Therefore, I need a place to work. The Wi-Fi needs to be really good, but actually I can mix between it being a leisure and a work trip.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's what I'm trying to get to, is that I see a shift happening in the way that these travels happen. Is maybe there's going to be a shift to longer business trips with the importance of combining work and leisure that's coming up. Also the environmental aspects. Maybe businesses are starting to be a bit more conscious about their carbon footprint and are favoring longer stays as opposed to frequent stays. So maybe they'll favor one longer stay and try to make the best out of that, as opposed to 3 days in a month or something. And that would help them minimize environmental impacts. Maybe also cost efficiency when you're extending the stay. You're not spending so much on flights, and maybe you're not spending so much on like the accommodation expenses. And I would also add the employee well-being. So like as a corporate traveler, if you're traveling so much, there's a point where it just becomes really, really tiring. And I feel like people are really valuing work-life balance and trying to avoid moving around so much if it's not necessary.
Yeah, I feel like that. I mean, I'm that person, right? I'm dead set on going away far less this year than I went last year, because we've got teams in local areas and we want to make local travel the norm so that we're not flying across the Atlantic and when we don't need to. And exactly that, want to prioritize family time too. Did your dad ever take you on one of his business trips?
No, you
And
didn't.
why? I'm not saying he didn't care about you. I mean, I could obviously say why. Probably because he had to be back at his office, right? The next
Yeah,
week.
and it was a very sort of, you go, you do the business trip, and you get everything done as fast as possible, and then you come back, and there's no time to really enjoy the area that you were in. And that's something that's I've always found really interesting, is like my dad will say, "Well, I've been to this place, I've been to that place," but actually, has he really? No, he hasn't visited the place. He's been there. He's been to the hotel. He's been to a couple of the nice restaurants, and he's been to the office, but he doesn't know the rest of the city or the place that he was actually visiting for business, because that's just how business travel traditionally works.
Tourism, yeah, yeah. And we're in the making memories business, right? We're trying to create an experience for people. And I do think
Yeah.
that's where we as an industry come into our own and we are at our best. Well, I would say, think about it from an experience point of view. How do you enhance it? How do you make it compatible with someone who might need to go into a bedroom and do some work? Put a desk in there, put a decent internet connection in, advertise that in the listing, reference that. But yeah, like the 1-2 night bookings where you're in now, I think the hotel's probably still going to be the one for that. And in terms of the reliability point, one thing I wanted to raise is and this is much more with a traditional corporate business, is short-term rentals will often want a security deposit to be taken, and corporate bookers just don't want to pay. So that's like a really just manual point. I mean, we have a product that kind of fills the gap, and it's becoming more popular, but that's just a really basic gap in our perception, is that if you're booking a hotel for say you're the booker from a corporate business, it's just $300 go. It's one night, $300 book. Whereas if you do the SDR thing, you then have $300 plus I'm putting $2,000 on a credit card that belongs to the company. Then I'm just thinking, it's the admin in my mind. If I have to go and chase and make sure we get it back, not that I don't trust our people who are staying, they're not going to damage anything, I'm sure, but it's the faff of having to do it. So as an industry, we need to be really aware of that. Even those small admin steps are enough to kind of push people into a hotel. And so that, I would hate that to be the reason why we lose a booking the hotel industry, right? The logistics behind it. It should be more that, when it's the right moment for a short-term rental, we make that booking process as seamless as possible. And I think in that aspect, we've still got a lot to do.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good point, actually. Yeah, I think that there is definitely a lot that we can do to improve that process and other processes that are already in place that we take sort of as, well, that's just how it is. But there's definitely room for improvement in our industry to maybe cater a bit better to the specific segment.
Yeah, interesting. We could talk about this all day. We're well over time, Raphi. We haven't got through all that we wanted to talk about, but there's always next week, my friend.
It's very
lovely to see you. Lovely to hang out.
Yeah, likewise.
Looking forward to hearing about wakeboarding and yoga progress more next week.
Yeah, I'll give you all the details.
And
enjoy
Raphi,
your run.
Thank you. Thanks. I don't know how much you care or you're interested, but I'm going to ask you anyway. So, it is the Euros tonight, and Scotland are opening the show. Is there any? Will you be watching? Will you be wearing a Scotland shirt? Will you be cheering? Any interest in that?
I probably won't, but let's see. Anything can happen. I'm generally open to new experiences, so we'll see. I'll let you know next week.
Spoken like a Gen Z. You don't sound like a millennial at all. Happy.
I know.
Thanks, mate. Lovely to see you.
Yeah. Bye, Leo. Great to see you too.